Neanderthals are not a myth and not a side branch of evolution. They were real humans. They lived on Earth for hundreds of thousands of years. According to modern data, the Neanderthal as a species appeared around 400,000 years ago. They evolved in the harsh conditions of glacial Europe and disappeared only about 40,000 years ago. That means, when there was no Rome or pyramids in Europe, Neanderthals were already hunting, making fires, and burying their dead. They survived during a time when the climate changed drastically and often. Imagine this: snow and glaciers one moment, then warmth and forests the next. And all this without houses, without clothing as we understand it, without stored food. They adapted and held on tightly. For most of their existence, they lived in Europe, but remains have also been found in the Middle East, Central Asia, and even Siberia. Wherever there were caves, game, and wood, Neanderthals could settle there. Many of their sites have been found in France, Spain, and the Balkans. That is exactly where they held on until the very end. According to archaeologists, the last Neanderthals survived in the Gibraltar area in southern Europe. Around 40 to 42,000 years ago, their traces disappear. This means they lived alongside our ancestors, anatomically modern humans, for about 10 to 15,000 years. They could even meet, interact, and have children together. If you saw a Neanderthal on the street, you'd realize he wasn't quite like us, but you wouldn't mistake him for a beast. He was human, just a different kind. A low forehead, heavy brow ridges, a broad nose, a large face with no chin, all of that set him apart from other types of humans. He had a sturdy, stocky body, a very wide rib cage, and short but powerful limbs. His height averaged around 165 centimeters, his weight about 80 kilograms, but almost all of it was muscle. He was built for a hard physical life, strong and resilient. The Neanderthal brain was no smaller than ours, in some cases even larger, up to 1,700 cubic centimeters. But that doesn't mean he was smarter. His brain was organized differently, with a more developed occipital region and perhaps a better visual system. His skull stretched backward, as if flattened from the sides. His hair was likely dark or reddish, his skin light, adapted to a cold climate. Eyes light-colored or brown. He looked like a man who had survived 1,000 winters. There was nothing unnecessary in his body. Everything served survival. Even the shape of his nose was designed by nature. Wide nostrils warmed the air before it reached the lungs. He looked clumsy, but he was quick in a fight. A Neanderthal didn't wear jewelry every day, but he knew how to make it. And he may have even looked at his reflection in the water to understand what he looked like. 3. Neanderthals didn't build cities or grow grain. Their life was simple and hard. They lived in small groups, 10, 20, sometimes 30 people. These were families and relatives. They moved from place to place, following herds of animals or looking for new shelters from the cold. They often settled in caves, warm, protected from wind and predators. If there was no cave, they built primitive huts from mammoth bones, sticks, and hides. These were the first human homes. They knew how to make fire and keep it going. Without it, death. To get warm, to cook meat, to protect themselves from wild animals, all of that was only possible with fire. They made tools from stone, bone, and wood. Stone axes, scrapers, spear tips. They made all of this by hand, without machines. Every tool was the result of experience, patience, and an understanding of materials. They mostly ate meat. They were hunters. They didn't throw spears from afar. They went head-on, got close to the prey, and struck at point-blank range. It was dangerous, but it meant lots of meat. They hunted bison, horses, deer, even rhinos. Sometimes they ate berries, nuts, mushrooms, and roots. They could catch fish and birds. Everything was about survival. Children were taught from an early age how to hunt, how to light a fire, how to shape stone. The weak were not abandoned. There are bones of elderly people who were fed and cared for. That is the main difference from animals. They had care, which means they had a soul. Neanderthals were not just survivalists. They had skills that required intelligence, memory, and even imagination. They were able to make complex stone tools. These were not just broken rocks. They were carefully thought out instruments. They knew from which angle to strike, what shape to give the tool, so it would fit comfortably in the hand. These technologies were passed down from elders to the young, which means there was teaching. They used fire. There are traces of ancient hearths where Neanderthals built fires, roasted meat, and kept warm. Fire was the center of their life. Around it, they slept, ate, and talked. It was a symbol of survival. They could make tools from bone and wood. They crafted sharpened sticks, clubs, spears. There is even evidence of glue made from resin, meaning they joined parts together. That is true craftsmanship. They cared for the sick. There are skeletons with healed fractures. That means someone fed and helped them. There are toothless Neanderthals who lived for years. They were fed soft food. That is care. That is human. They buried the dead. Not all, but some. Sometimes they placed them in a pit, sprinkled ochre, left animal bones nearby, traces of fire, flowers. This means they understood death. There is evidence of decorations, beads, shells, predator claws. Maybe they were worn for status, maybe just for beauty, which means they understood themselves. Some scientists believe they had language. Not like ours, but a form of communication definitely existed. Without it, you can't explain how to hunt as a group. Neanderthals went extinct about 40,000 years ago. Why? Scientists still debate it. There's no single cause, more like a whole tangle of them. The first theory is climate, a sudden cooling. Forests disappeared, animals became scarce, hunting grew harder. And Neanderthals had no storage, no stockpiles, no long-term food preservation. They relied on nature day by day. When everything changes too quickly, tribes simply can't adapt in time. The second theory is competition with other humans. Around 60,000 years ago, Homo sapiens, our ancestors, arrived in Europe. They were more mobile, had more advanced tools, and formed alliances between groups. Sapiens could adapt to new territories faster and push Neanderthals out of the best areas. They hunted the same animals, sought the same caves. In a clash of species, the one that's faster and more flexible wins. The third theory is disease. New viruses may have arrived with the newcomers, and Neanderthals had no immunity. Epidemics could wipe out entire groups. One gets sick, all die. Population size also matters. There were never many Neanderthals. Estimates suggest only a few tens of thousands across all of Eurasia. When groups become too small, degradation begins. DNA diversity drops, genetic problems appear. They disappeared, but not entirely. Nearly every person outside of Africa today carries 1 to 2% Neanderthal DNA. That means they didn't just vanish, they became part of us. Neanderthals are our relatives. Most people outside of Africa carry traces of their DNA. 1 to 2%. That means we met them, lived alongside them, and had children together. They didn't simply go extinct. They live on in us. They were the first to bury the dead, to care for the sick, to craft complex tools. They lived in harsh conditions and survived where modern humans might not. Their knowledge could have been passed on to our ancestors. Hunting, fire, clothing, even behavior. They lived for hundreds of thousands of years, and that alone is an achievement. Their contribution isn't in words. It's in the fact that we are here. We are stronger because they once existed.